I've had both these games for a good while now. Xenoblade Chronicles X for about 2 weeks. And while I haven't gotten past the fourth chapter, that's on purpose because I'm doing other things to increase my level and unlock the class I want so that by the time I get to the mech class, I've got plenty. I mean, I've got my mechs or skill, as the game calls it, unlocked. I can customize pretty much myself as much as I want, down to my weapon, class, skill, class, and whatever I want. So that's my reasoning for not getting past the fourth chapter yet. Now, this video is going to be dealing with some of the criticism this one has seen as of late, especially from IGN and GameSpot, who don't seem to have brains. Well, I'm pretty sure we all knew that, but some people are probably thinking, oh, I'm defending this just because it's Xenoblade. No, I'm not defending it just because it's Xenoblade. If I was defending it just because it was Xenoblade, here's why. Here's why I'm not. Because I actually do agree with David Reddit's criticism towards it. You know, the guy did a response video to about a month or 3 months, 4 months at most, and two ago. But moving on, IGN and Xenoblade. First, actually, I'll even be bringing up David's little review and review plus two, even though I don't have a beef with them. And I'll also be bringing up Angry Video Game Nerd. I mean, not Angry Video Game Nerd. Angry Joe's review of Fallout 4, alongside the reviews of Fallout 4 from IGN and GameSpot. And Destructoid review of both games as well. Why? Because it brings up some contradictions that that people might not notice. For example, they give games, except for Destructoid, GameSpot and IGN both give Fallout 4 a 9 out of 10. But yet, they give Xenoblade 8, which I actually think is a pretty fair. Actually, they give it slightly above 8, and I think that's a pretty fair score. I would say Xenoblade Chronicles X is a 8.5, and the original is a 9. Yes, I will also be going into detail why I think that, but first let's go into the criticisms. Criticisms of Xenoblade. First, they complain about the simple story and say it's boring, tired. They say it's boring, tiresome, it's stale. Ignore the background. Guys, sorry if you hear anything in the background. I'm sorry, but anyway, yeah. Anyway, like they say it's a boring, stilted story, and yet they don't seem to bring that up with the main, which is the main things from from Fallout's story. If you're going off side stuff and gonna count in all the side stuff that you can do that is optional in Fallout 4, then you have to do the same for Xenoblade, because there's a lot of story you get via the affinity missions, which, has Destructoid pointed out, are some of the best parts and why they gave it a higher score. Or because they, which I don't agree with the score they gave it, but still, they at least pointed out that the affinity missions add extra character development. If you're gonna point that out in Fallout, out you should do that for Xenoblade. You should point out optional stuff in games if you're going to do it in another game. That's only fair. If you're going to point out Xenoblade has optional stuff that'll make. I mean, if you're not going to point it out in Xenoblade, talk about how awesome the Infinity missions or do them, then don't do them in Fallout. Do not sit there and go and say, hey, you know what? Let's talk about this, even though it's optional. But we can skip that. And it's optional. They don't, it's Xenoblade. We can do whatever we want and just say, oh, you're just Nintendo fanboys. Boys, for hating on our review. Yeah, no. Doesn't fly. Next, you're going to say the stilted character models and stilted dialogue from certain characters in Xenoblade, but yet Fallout has some of the exact same problems. I mean, Angry Joe, of all people, pointed this out. He had the guts to point out some of the problems. And then another problem with Fallout is the size. You're gonna say that the graphics and textures sometimes look but yet say that they look amazing in Fallout 4. If you take in the fact that they don't look that they only look they only look passable for for H-gen hardware. They really do. They only look passable. But then take in the fact that the game is 1/5 the size of Xenoblade, right? And that the mechs that you get are more customizable in Xenoblade, right? And that you are given slightly more character customization options in Xenoblade. Right? Then if you if you're gonna take into account that, you're gonna take into account that, then if you're not going to take into account, if you take into account that you, if you take into account that you, if you take into account that the graphics look even, and the bugs are even more of a problem. Blum. They're even more of a problem. It's just what the, oh, they're not bad. They're honestly not. And I know it seems like I'm really just trying to harp on Fallout here, but um, I I kind of am. But here's the thing: most of the people who are complaining, most of the people who are complaining about the reviews are complaining because we want people to be fair. If you're honestly going to sit here and just go, this is fine in Fallout, but then start really hammering it home or being nitpicky or in Xenoblade, then don't. And as I said before, I do agree with a lot of what David said about Xenoblade Chronicles X. I do think his complaints are definitely valid. There's only one complaint, like I think he can't say, and that's really that the original had way more variety in side quests. No, in the original, and I played a lot of the side quests. Unlike most people, I played the side quests to get the all them because I had to do it for two Monado arts because those two were optional. So I got those two. So the quests I had to do ranged from talk to someone and then talk to another person and then talk to that original person and yeah. And to kill this monster to get this special item, or kill this monster just to kill this monster. They were pretty much that those two. They were pretty much those two. That was pretty much those. That was pretty much the quest variety in Xenoblade Chronicles X and Xenoblade Chronicles. They There really wasn't that much, but I do now after playing it see a lot of David's complaints with the original. Well, not the original, Xenoblade with X. X really has some flaws, and one of those flaws is the quick draw. The fact that to cycle through your arts, you gotta go use the D-pad. Okay, but you're also moving with the left analog stick. You use the left one to move, and then you gotta stop moving, and take your hand and select the art. So you're not as able to quick draw your arts as you were in the original. And I know what you're saying. You weren't able to do that in the original either. If you were smart and played with the Wii Remote and Nunchuck, where you could move with the analog stick on the Nunchuck and use the D-pad with your right hand at the same time, you were way faster on the quick draw. Oh. Plus, I do really prefer the Monado Vision and having the extra Monado art and having a talent gauge move that you can perform with the other characters. I really do miss those features. But are they enough to make New Xenoblade a C game? Heck, an, an 8, just an 8 out of 10? No. They're more like, they're are more like an 8.5 at lowest out of 10. That's what I would say. But it's still a good game. It does have its flaws. And I would say the story, take it as if it was Star Wars Episode 5, ending up for maybe something later. If they if the next game is also a sequel to this game, then then it'll be just like the original Star Wars trilogy, except for 6, where it left you wanting more rather than wrapping up nice and tightly before or the final one. So I'm hoping that there are more. because as it is right now, it's good. But there are some answered questions that, like, they could continue it. Anyway, it's if they do, it will bring the story up even more so. I hope it's letting us know that some of the questions we had will be answered. As it stands, Xenoblade Chronicles stands has the better story because it's a standalone, and we know we're not getting anything to continue that one. But I would also say that Xenoblade Chronicles X is right behind it. It's still really good. But it just needs we just need to know if the next one's going to be a direct sequel or not. If the next one is a direct sequel, then these questions aren't just then the questions we have aren't just it's going to be not answered. But they're not that important. Like they're like you can deal without them being answered because they give somewhat of enough explanation to say, "Oh, come on," to allow us to just go with it. But all in all, my little complaint, mostly with with the reviews, is mostly people bullshitting themselves and giving Fallout 4 nines and giving Xenoblade 8. I would actually. I don't even agree with the Structoid's review of the games. I think it's more fair as this. Fallout is an 8, like Angry Joe said, but David Reddit's score, where he gave it an 8.5 or an 8.2 or whatever he said, and that was slightly above an 8, I would say that's Xenoblade's score. That is how I think it would be fair, because especially when you take into account the bugs and glitches and all that other stuff. And that's what most or most non Xenoblade fanboys are complaining about. If you're a Xenoblade fanboy, you can go to hell, because Xenoblade fanboys who can worship the game and say the game can do no wrong are idiots. I know the first one didn't, the first Xenoblade game isn't perfect. And heck, I even noticed and admitted that there are a lot of flaws that weren't in the first one that were in the second one. But they weren't like game breaking or enough to even make the game average. I would say it's still a pretty good game. Aim a slightly above a standard 8 out of 10, but not a 9 out of 10 like the Structoid would have you believe, but also so not as low as some questionable people at GameSpot would have you believe by giving it an 8. And for once, I actually think Angry Joe's not being too negative or too positive, and actually got it right with his review of a game. Fallout 4 is reviewed by Angry Joe is the perfect review to watch for it. And I'd say David Reddit's second review and combined with his first is the perfect review to watch of Xenoblade Chronicles as of yet. Uh, it, I hope this has at least answered some people's questions, or has helped people come to terms with something. If not, leave it in the comment section below. If you have any questions, I will try and respond and help clear up anything else you would have about this game.